Kamy, how would you introduce yourself and what you do to the world?
So nowadays, I call myself a nutritional therapist and I specialize in children's weight loss. And I built this company called Step Together, where basically we help hundreds of families help their children overcome all the root causes of excess weight so that they don't have excess weight issues for the rest of their life.
And why are you doing this?
That's a deep question. So, and to answer that, I'm going to have to go way back. So, I mean, we can put up some pictures here on the episode, but I grew up as an overweight kid. So very simply, from the age of 6 and 7 year old, as far as I can remember, when we actually moved from Iran to Canada,
How old were you?
about 7 years old, I think. And it's interesting because I remember in Iran I wasn't overweight. I was a little bit chubby, but over there I remember we used to play soccer in the streets. We also had different kinds of foods, but I was still like the chubby kid who was like the goalie instead of like playing on the field for soccer.
Do you think anything big changed in your mindset when you moved here?
I don't think I was conscious at the time. I think it was really just we moved here, and as immigrants in Canada, we had a lot of financial difficulty in the beginning. My parents obviously had to redo all their studies, and then there was just a lot of stress factors. They were both working a lot. There was a lot of, let's say, disagreements, but also a lot of arguing as they were trying to settle here and not really succeeding as well as they hoped. And looking back, it's clear that I was actually dealing with a lot of their stress. And for me, I remember I remember the school lunches that my mom was giving me. For example, like she was giving me, those cheap hot dogs that you buy that they're like almost they look like plastics, and she was packing it in like cheap hot dog buns, and she would put like three hot dogs in one bun with ketchup, and that's what she would send me to school with. And at the time, I loved it. Like for me, that was like such delicious food. Or it was like grilled cheese sandwiches with a juice box or something like that. So it was very convenient, cheap food that she could prepare. My mom could prepare quickly that she sent me off to school. But I also remember at home I was struggling with a lot of overeating, especially at night. Whenever there was like bread or something like that, I would just eat way too much of it. Same thing with rice. And I had a lot of difficulties with fruits actually too.
How can you have the difficulties with fruits?
Yeah, so that's interesting because a lot of nutritionists were telling us at the time, like, hey, it's okay, eat fruits as much as you want. But I myself, like, for the longest time, I remember my mom even had two separate drawers in our fridge. What were my fruits and were my brother fruits, and she had put a name tag on them. And I would always finish mine like almost instantly, and I would eat my brother's as well, and she would like always yell at me. So I had difficulty with that as well. But yeah, so I grew up overweight as a kid, and when I was young in elementary school is actually where I had the biggest difficulty with it. I remember in elementary school, around grade 4 and 5 is when I remember the first instance of being bullied because of my weight. Like people were starting to make fun of me for it. The cool kids were like picking on me, sometimes pretty violently, actually.
Is that your first painful memory from your childhood that is connected to your weight struggles?
I don't know if this is the first, but the most painful one was this memory of a couple of cool kids. They kind of tricked me into coming and play with them outside in the Montreal winter, and it was, the ground is full of snow, and they tricked me into coming and playing with them, and one of them essentially tripped me, and I fell on the floor, and they started ripping my clothes apart and calling me fat, and like really like basically they got me pretty close to being naked, and they were kicking me and all these things. And at the time, I was just like, I didn't understand why they were doing that, other than I'm overweight or fat.
Kids can be cruel, especially when it comes to treating others that are struggling with weight. It's pretty common, in my opinion. How did you feel?
It's really then that I started becoming self-conscious. Like I started not wanting to go and play with people. I started to become a lot more introverted, and I retreated into like becoming I developed the identity of the kid who's like smart and secluded and doesn't really need friends that much. Not that I didn't have friends, but I had a couple like kind of similar like me, kind of like isolated friends who were like the nerds, if you want to call them, right at the time. That's kind of the label that I had for myself. And then I remember going into high school, and in Canada, high school starts at grade seven, so it's a bit different than United States. So grade seven,
How old are you in grade seven?
I think about 10, 11 years old. I started school and I was so worried. Oh, I remember this. I remember I had such difficulty finding a uniform that fits me and I don't look overweight in it. I was so obsessed with like how my like man breasts look, like they were poking out, and I was trying to make sure that my stomach was not bulging out too much. And I think I even put a belt on my stomach to hold it in even deeper.
And that was when you were 11 years old.
Yeah. And I remember the first day of school, I was so worried if anyone's going to be my friend because I was overweight. Thankfully,
Did
like, not, I mean, I remember the first day of school, I made one of my closest friends. So thankfully, it wasn't that bad, but I had really picked up the identity of being the overweight kid. And throughout all of high school, which was from grade 7 to 11 in Canada, every year I was growing so much weight that I had to buy like a whole new set of uniform at the larger size. So I started something like medium and I went all the way to like double XL by the end of it. And it was so painful. I would always feel like my pants are too tight and I'm coming home and I'm releasing the belt and all these things. And it's like, ah, breath, like, you know, fresh breath of air kind of thing coming home. So it was really uncomfortable.
there was a lot of struggle in your head because of that?
Yeah, I mean, looking back, it wasn't, it had become normal. I was just the overweight kid, and that was who I was. And people treated me as that. Sometimes, I mean, people picked on me for it, but I was also like stronger than most kids, so they couldn't really pick up on me because of my size. But I mean, they tried. Like, I don't know if people, probably kids still do this to this day, but they kind of like come and touch your breasts or like scoop them or something. Guys do that to each other. And they did that a lot. Like a lot of people would like run by me and scoop my breasts and then just run like by, and they knew I couldn't catch them, so they would just like get away with it. And I have this memory too as well. Like there's a time where, oh, this is actually pretty vicious. I forgot about this. There's a presentation they give about why you shouldn't bully kids, right? And one of the things that you shouldn't bully kids for is the excess weight, obviously, right? So they were giving that presentation to a group of kids who were 1 year older than us. And then that group of kids came out of that presentation. And instead of like applying the lesson of, hey, don't bully, they actually were walking around and calling me by the name of the kid who was overweight in that presentation. So like there was a
Wow,
kid called like Marco or something, and they're like, hey, like we shouldn't bully Marco because of his weight. And they came out and they're calling me Marco.
that's
And I
cruel.
didn't understand at the time what was like they were calling me Marco, and I didn't know what was going on. But I grew like a year older and I realized, holy shit. I was like they were calling me the fat kid without actually telling me. So there was a lot of subtle things like that that also affected me looking back.
How did you manage all of those emotions that you were having?
The hard part is I didn't really feel like I was having emotions. I didn't really feel like it was anything outside the norm. It had become so normal and so accustomed to it that I just live with it. I didn't think there was something I could change, so I didn't really bother with it. But obviously, looking back, I mean, this is only later as an adult that I understood, but there was so much of my emotions being suppressed with just the way I was eating the first thing I would do when I come back home after school was I would make myself a very big sandwich filled with walnuts and cheese and a huge glass of milk, like as soon as I come back from home. And then I would have dinner right after that. And then after that, I would have like a whole box of Cheerios cereals or Honey Nuts, whatever. And at some point, my mom even bought like protein cereals, but I was eating the entire pack of protein cereal and drinking milk well into the night. Like I was going to bed most nights almost in a state of food comatose. And that's how I was comfortable like falling asleep. I couldn't really sleep if I wasn't like to a point of vomiting full.
That sounds like you were stuck in like a kind of like a wrong cycle, because at one point all of your stresses were coming from being bullied because of your weight, and then coming back home you were managing those emotions with adding to that weight, because excessive eating is definitely not helping with managing that weight.
Yeah. But looking back, it wasn't actually the stress of being overweight that was the cause of my eating. Like that was just something that was added on top of it. Like I was overweight and then people bullied me for it and I would come home and feel bad about it. But the majority of my emotional stress as a kid was actually from my home.
Can you tell me more about this?
Yeah. So a lot of it actually started way before I was aware.
In your very early childhood?
Yeah. I was in my, this is only something I realized later. When I was in my mom's, when I was in my mom's womb, her brother had passed. And he passed because he was going through a lot of difficulties being a doctor in war in Iran. And I still really don't know to this day if it was out of suicide because they found him with alcohol and medication in his bloodstream because he was a doctor, he could self medicate.
Yeah.
But they also said that they found him like asphyxiated because he had forgot to put on they put on a fireplace and he was sleeping next to it and they forgot to put on the lid so the oxygen was there was not enough oxygen in the room and he just never woke up from his sleep. But yeah, while I was in the womb, her brother had passed. And then when I was born prematurely at 32 weeks old because they found out that my twin had passed.
I'm so sorry. I'm pretty sure that there is a lot of pain associated to that, but there's also not a lot of awareness that people have that traumatizing situations from even before you're born can have so much impact on it. So thank you
Yeah.
for sharing that.
Yeah, and it's something that I didn't like. Even today, if you ask me, hey, did that affect you? I don't really feel like it did, but why am I crying while I'm saying it? I think what happens with a lot of kids, and probably happened with my case too, is in the early ages of life when you're born, and you're born in such kind of grief and sadness. And my mom, obviously, she was devastated. I think I picked up a lot of that. So that was the early few years of my life. And it probably is the reason why I was struggling with excess weight and a lot of anxiety, even to this day. But my brother, who was 2 years older than me, didn't really have that much issues. And then when we came to Canada, there was a lot of financial stress that we were in. At some point, my dad made a really bad investment. Not really his fault. There's a lot of people in the community who got kind of scammed by this investor who took a lot of the Iranian community's money. And he was like, a very popular guy and people trusted him. So my dad took out loans, I think up to 250,000 under my mom's name, under her student loans, gave it to this guy. And during the 2008 crisis, the guy disappeared. He took everybody's money, including ours, and we were stuck with a lot of financial stress. So I remember this is something my mom recently told me actually. She said that when she found out about that, she really wanted to kill herself. She had, this is what I remember, but she had locked herself in a room under the pretense that she was studying for like a month. And I didn't really see her. And we were confused, like, what's going on? Why is she so sad? Because they didn't really tell us in the beginning. There was still some hope that maybe the guy would come back and we'd find the money. But obviously he never did. And that created a huge separation between my parents. That was like really the beginning of the downfall. I don't remember my parents ever like sleeping in the same room together, actually, even when we were younger. Actually, yeah, I do remember a bit of that. But after that, definitely, I don't remember them. They were completely separate. My mom was living in the basement, and my dad was sleeping in the bedroom. They were completely separated. And for many years, that was their life. Just my mom struggling so hard to make up for my dad's mistake. My dad trying as well, but never really finding a stable job, never being able to provide financially, never making up for his mistake. And eventually that led to so much fighting, so much aggressive fighting. I remember like I was sometimes even scared that one of them would kill each other based on the fighting, like the way they would go at each other and they would attack each other. And me and my brother, we were trying to separate them. We were like trying to come in the way and be like, hey, don't do this and all that. So yeah, needless to say, there was a lot of emotional pain growing up. And so I
It sounds
didn't
like,
know,
go ahead.
yeah. So I didn't know how to deal with all of this. Like as a kid, who do I even go to for my emotions if my mom's devastated and my dad's almost closed off from his own mistakes and pain? So looking back, it's obvious I just went to food, right?
It sounds like you've been exposed to really a lot of trauma ever since you were in this world. And it is a lot. It is a lot what you're just sharing right now. It's a lot to process for an adult, so let alone for the child that felt so alone and all of that. And you mentioned that it's so obvious that you went for the food. What do you mean by that? It's so obvious.
In hindsight, it's so like it's clear. I was using food to suppress all of this. I was feeling a lot of pain from a very young age, and I had probably, my brain had found that the most reliable way to deal with it was just eat. So I was the kid who was always hungry. I was the kid who couldn't stop himself. I was the kid who my mom had to always tell me that, hey, leave some for the others, right? Hey, maybe you've had enough. And sometimes she would even try to scare me. Hey, like, you're going to get diabetes like grandma. You should really stop. She would show me pictures of people who had lost their foot because of diabetes and all of these things. But it's very absurd looking back, because my mom was doing the same thing. Her way of dealing with her emotions was also using food. She wasn't really ever that much overweight because she was always dieting. And I think as an adult, she had a bit more self control, but she binged at night. She overate. She, later on, I learned that she was, from a very young age, making herself throw up. And I also have this very vivid memory of one time we came back from a Chinese buffet and I had eaten too much and I was feeling uncomfortable. And my mom was both worried that I was feeling uncomfortable, but also worried that I'm going to keep gaining more and more weight. So she brought me to the bathroom and she told me, hey, if you tickle the back of your tongue in this way, you can make yourself throw up and at least not absorb all of those calories.
Wow.
Yeah, so I did that and it worked. It worked really well. I kept doing it for many, many years until I was 23, 24. I kept doing that. Whenever I went too overboard, whenever I lost too much control, I was like, hey, maybe at least I can get rid of some of the calories. And sometimes I would make myself throw up and I would lose control again and eat the same food and make myself throw up again.
That is very uncommon, I think, in nowadays, still to this day, to for guys to seem to have that problem. So I first of all really appreciate you sharing that with us, because I'm sure that there is this stigma that food problems, eating disorders like bulimia or anorexia are rather assigned to girls, and you don't hear about boys' cases at all, and you're talking about that so openly. If you can explain a little bit more how you dealt with that and how did that make you feel at the time?
Well, obviously, I was extremely ashamed of it. No one really knew. Maybe I was telling sometimes to my mom, but sometimes my mom would be like, yeah, good job. Like, good thing that you did that. And if
Wow,
I'm
really?
honest, even to this day, she sometimes still struggles with it. She still does it. Sometimes she tells me, hey, it's been like 6 months I haven't done it, which is good on one hand, but it's also something, it's a clear sign that she hasn't really overcome that challenge herself. So, yeah, how did it affect me? I was extremely ashamed of it. Every time I did it, I felt like it was going to be the last time and I'm never going to do this again. And obviously, I did it again.
So it's almost like you've been addicted to that as well. Not just food on its own, the patterns and that vicious cycle, but also adding to that the bulimia.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess looking back, it's the only way I had control on this situation because I couldn't. Like I was able to eat very well for the beginning of the day. I was doing exercise. Sometimes I was even doing like this one time I trained for a marathon and I was like doing like maybe 2, 3 hours of running every other day, eating really clean and still overeating at night and making myself throw up sometimes.
To feel that you didn't lose the progress.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't want to, like I just ran for 2 hours. I lost 1,000 calories. I'm not gonna make this like 3 bars of chocolate, lose all of that. I'm gonna just quickly throw them up so I don't have that in my stomach anymore.
Do you think that you overcame it now?
Yeah, yeah, it's been a long time.
How does that make you feel being on the other side of the problem?
It's bittersweet.
Bittersweet.
Yeah, because I've overcome it, and it feels so easy in hind like it seems so clear in hindsight. I really wish I really wish someone showed me the way to overcome it much earlier. Someone showed me the connection between the emotions and all the challenges and the eating. Because growing up, like you can imagine, my mom tried so many times to make me diet, go on these programs. At one point, she spent $12,000, and even to this day, she still sometimes likes to bring that up. Like, hey, I spent so much money and it didn't work. She spent $12,000 on Jenny Craig, which is like this weight loss program that gives you frozen food, and you just eat the frozen food for a certain amount of time and nothing else. And yeah, of course, you lose weight because the calorie restriction is so extreme. And then as soon as I stopped within the next year, like I lost maybe 50, 60 pounds. Within the next year, I gained 80 pounds back. And so we tried so many things like that. And I just wish someone came in earlier to show me it wasn't really about the diet or how much exercise I was doing.
So, is that the only way that your mom and dad ever addressed your weight problems, or all of the emotions that you were coping with and the weight altogether?
Yeah, so no one really ever addressed emotions. That's not something we even talked about. Immigrant family from the Middle East, very very unaware of just emotions overall, I would say, other than things like anger and things like that, right? Those were the emotions I was really comfortable with. But my mom dealt with it this way. She just said, hey, like you're gonna just she would try to like either scare me into dieting or make me feel guilty, or in some way or another try to restrict what I was eating and pushing me to exercise. And my dad was a little bit more subtle. He was a bit more hands off, but he would make comments. Like he would joke about it. He would like point out at my stomach and like laugh about it. And sometimes he would just say, "Hey, just like tell your mind to not eat, and it's gonna work. Like just keep telling yourself, I'm not gonna eat, I'm not gonna eat, I'm not gonna eat, and it's gonna work." And I tried, but
And did
eventually I
it?
stopped. It obviously didn't work. And then eventually I stopped even listening to any of their advice.
So, you mentioned your parents a lot actually in all of the stories that you were going through. So clearly they had a big impact on your childhood altogether, meaning that what they brought to your life also wasn't making it necessarily easier. If you can just explain to me altogether, how would you say your relationship with your parents was?
Altogether, my relationship with my parents was very distant. From a very young age, I lost any trust in their guidance. And maybe it was because of this weight thing, but also because of the financial struggle, because of the issues that they were having. From a young age, I was just rejecting all of their authority and emotional support because it wasn't clear to me that it was helpful. For example, whenever I would go with emotions, and even to this day, if I go to my parents with emotions, I don't have trust that they'll make me or make the situation better. Often it would make it even worse. They would amplify the emotions, they would amplify the problems. So I was very distant. I didn't trust going to them about anything. And so from a very young age, I carved my own path. I decided that I'm going to be independent. I'm going to study whatever I want to study and go find my path. And I would reject anything he said, especially anything that my mom said. My dad, at some point, he stopped really being involved and even providing guidance. He left our family rather early on. He would keep going back and forth to Iran for months and years at a time, and eventually he just left completely.
How old were you?
When he left,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't really remember him being there much throughout high school. And then he left, I think, when high school finished. And it's interesting because I was the one who really asked him to leave. It came to a point where he was, to my eyes, causing so much damage to us and my mom because of all the fighting and arguing and his inability to accept his own faults, that I told him, hey, just you should probably go to Iran so that my mom can stay alive. And so he left.
It's a very brave move.
I don't know if it was brave, it was necessary. I really felt like his presence was making things worse.
Did it help when he when he got somewhat removed from the picture?
It helped, yeah. My mom got some, she was finally able to breathe in some sense. But it's interesting because as soon as he left, I felt guilty. I felt, I was calling him and the only thing I cared about was trying to convince him to come back. But I actually didn't see him for 7 years after that.
And how is your relationship with him today?
Not as deep as I wish he was. And not that I didn't try. I, at some point in my late 20s, I poured so much energy in trying to rekindle. After 7 years, I tried to catch up on everything that we had lost. And I brought him to a trip to Europe. We backpacked all over Europe together. And I was trying to build that deep relationship again. But for one reason or another, it didn't work out. And I never got the sense that he was that interested in rekindling it, which I'm sure he was, but in his ways, he was very distant and closed off. Right.
It takes two people.
I guess so, yeah. It takes two people. But looking back, yeah, my relationship with both my parents, it never felt like I could go to them for emotions or guidance or anything like that. So I carved my own path from a very young age. I was the rebel. I was doing things that, you know, parents don't want you to do. Drink alcohol, do drugs. Thankfully, I still had good grades, but I was within a framework of success, but not like definitely trying to be what my mom or going against what my mom wished I was. For example, she wanted me to be a doctor. I on purpose didn't take the classes that would allow me to be a doctor, even though I had the grades to be. Like I think I did all the classes to have the grades or the ability to go into med school. But at the last minute, I decided to not take one of the classes that was needed to just eliminate any chances. And then I went into engineering. Right. So there's a long story there, but all that being said, the biggest challenge was this, that I didn't have anyone that I could go to when I had these emotional challenges. And my brain had just learned that food is the best way. Like if I tell if my brain tells me that instead of me feeling sad and grief, I'm just hungry, I would just go eat a lot and feel better the night and everything would be okay.
And it never was.
It was temporarily, but the next day I had the same problems.
Well, you look very healthy now. So at some point, something must have changed.
Yeah, so what changed was actually I had to go very deep into the pain before even realizing that there was pain to begin with. So I was actually somewhere along the lines in my mid 20s, I was at the peak of my engineering career. Very successful, very quickly climbed the ladder, even went off and built my own startup and had all the material success that my mom wished I would have. But I was miserable. And I was still, we were going to put some pictures here on the screen, and I was still struggling with weight, and I was still struggling with coming home, overeating, and at that point sometimes I would even drink alcohol. So I would be successful as an engineer, even manage a team and be a lot of people trusting me, and I have all this willpower at work, but coming home I kept failing over and over. I didn't have the willpower to help myself stop, and I was so broken by this because at that point I must have tried for 20 years to overcome this. It's not that I didn't care, like really tried. And every time I lost the weight, something would happen, I would gain it back. So I was determined to figure out what was actually going on. Like, what is all of this? I wasn't aware of my emotions still. All I knew is I get hungry at night. So I went deep. I went deep into meditation specifically, but really just deep into understanding my emotions, going inside and figuring out what are the triggers? What is causing all of this? Am I sad? Am I anxious? I didn't really know. It didn't feel like I was. Everyone was also feeling that I was such a stoic guy with no emotion, that I could handle so much stress. But my brain has just learned to shut all of those off. Like there was no need for those emotions. No one's gonna help you with them. You're just hungry.
But it wasn't really just that.
Yeah, obviously not. So I went deep into understanding who I was and what was causing all of this. And that's when I really understood how to overcome it. How every time I was overeating, there was either something specific that happened or an accumulation of stress or an accumulation of all the memories of the past. When I went deep into meditation, so many of the memories of childhood, the challenges, even some memories of the pain of my twin came up. And I was happy. I remember I was sitting in the meditation room with 100 other guys, and all these memories were flushing through my brain and they were all like coming up. And I was like hysterically laughing and bursting into tears because I was like, God damn, there's so much stuff that I was holding on to, even tiny things that I didn't know I was holding on to. And once they were flushing out, it just, I felt so light. I felt like I could walk on air. And that was really the beginning of the change. Once I dealt with the root emotions, suddenly I didn't need to binge at the night anymore. I could just go to bed. And slowly after that, I just learned to take care of myself, learned to take care of not just the logical and material success, but the emotional side of my being as well.
Was that a beginning to your success?
Yeah. And that's what really led to stabilizing at a healthy weight without ever really focusing that much on the weight itself.
There's a lot of there seems to be a lot of pain, but it feels also that you were able to take that pain, reshape it, and use it as a fuel to not only help yourself, but based on what you what we can see that what you do is you are on the mission to help others as well.
Yeah, and I really think at this point it's outside my hands. You know, me doing what I'm doing today, it feels completely like the universe guided me through all that pain so that I have this deep understanding and this deep desire, almost like a fire burning in my heart, just to make sure that no kid goes through that.
That's a beautiful mission. Can you share where did it come from? How did you decide that that is my path? Because you mentioned you're an engineer.
Yeah. Yeah, so the beautiful way the universe crafted this whole thing was I was violently pulled out of the engineering path, not by anyone else, but myself. I reached a point where it was so meaningless to pursue all of that despite carrying so much pain. And I went onto the meditation path, the understanding of who we are and who I am and what's causing all of this. And then that's where also I went on a trip to Europe with my dad. So going back to that story, I was backpacking across Europe. We were going from Portugal all the way to Turkey. And somewhere in the middle of that trip, we were in Venice. And in Venice, it was, I think, the last night that we were there. And my dad was there, and my brother had also joined us for our trip. While we were in Italy, he had joined us just for a couple of days over there. But they were both tired for the night, and they were both in the hotel room. And I told myself, it's probably the last time I'm going to be in Venice for the couple years, maybe decades. So I'm going to go out and enjoy the night. You know, enjoy the water, enjoy the waves, enjoy the ambiance a little bit more. So I sat down at the edge of the city, looking at the sea and the waves crashing into us. And I felt compelled to ask the stars for some reason. And I was never a religious person to be saying that I was speaking to God or anything. But I felt compelled to ask the stars, what should I do? What's next for me? And I heard this voice either from my subconscious or the universe or God, whatever people believe. I heard this crystal clear thing saying, take care of the kids and everything will work out. And it was so strange at the time for me because I didn't know what it was talking about. I hadn't even fully healed from my own pain. I was only starting to realize that it was emotions leading to my excess weight. But I had this feeling like I had to learn this, how to overcome this, to be able to help kids. Very quickly after that, 2, 3 months after that, two of the kids of my mom's friends who were also struggling with excess weight. One of them was 5 years old, and the other was, I think at the time, 11 years old. And I was going through my journey of like, I'm losing all this weight, I'm taking care of myself, I'm meditating, I'm understanding what's leading all of the excess weight. And these two kids were looking up to me. And they started coming to me with when I was working out and they were working out. They were listening to my advice. When I would go on walks, they would come on walks with me. And I spent a lot of almost an entire summer kind of being their mentor and helping them with their weight. But it didn't work. And the reason it didn't work is because as much as I was trying to help them, they would go back to their home environment where they themselves have a lot of fighting and emotional difficulty, or at least they did a lot at the time. And also, both parents are struggling with their own health. And so, all the work that we did together with me was immediately negated by the environment that they returned to. And I tried my best to convince the parents. I tried to help them. I tried to help them understand, to make them change, to understand the pain that the kids were going through. We met many times over months, but it was never consistent. I felt like the parents weren't taking it as seriously as they should and sticking to the changes as much as they should. And so at some point, I had to realize there's only so much you can do to help kids. The people who can really help them is their parents. So that's when it really started. That's where I started shifting my focus, and I felt this strong urge to create this whatever turned into this company to help parents understand how to truly help their kids. And so over time, the parents who understood and took on the responsibility of doing it, it was almost a miracle. Without ever interacting with the children, just the parents changing their beliefs and their habits, the kids would naturally just follow. And the kids would lose weight. And everything would stabilize in their home life. And that to me felt incredible. That I could help kids without them even really knowing it, without ever being feeling self-conscious about it, that they're a problem to be solved. So I founded this company so that we can help as many parents help the millions of children in this world that need the help. Not just for excess weight, but any symptom of mental health challenges, any kind of addiction that is suppressing these emotions in an unhealthy way. So, yeah, that's how I ended up.
If you could go back to that moment when you're sitting in Venice, because I'm assuming that when you first asked that question, got some subconscious answer. It probably wasn't so clear at the beginning. But if you could go back to that Kamy sitting in that Venice that night, would he be proud of where it all led to?
He probably would. It's interesting. I'm feeling like there's two things that would probably happen. It would be like, yeah, of course that's where it would end up. But also, wow, who would have thought? Who would have thought that I would leave that successful engineering career behind and carve this path where we're doing something that feels so meaningful. And today, our company is essentially a company of people who are going back in time and helping their younger selves. And to me, that's incredible.
If you could tell me what is the most important part about Step Together, if there's like one core pillar or a motto or a goal,
Hmm.
what would that be?
There's a couple that come through my mind, and I'll just say this. Maybe this is the one that's going to land. It's to go back in time and help children avoid decades of pain, but also be truly understood, to give them the chance of having the life that they deserve.
So it's that what you do and step together.
Yeah.
It's not about just weight loss.
Yeah, it's never been just about weight loss.
What are the patterns do you see recurring in the families that are coming to you asking for help, and what are their successes after?
The most common pattern that I see is this. And this is also why whenever parents go to nutritionists and doctors and all these weight loss programs, like maybe they lose a bit of weight and just like me, they gain it all back. The pattern is the child typically felt some kind of emotional stress growing up. And the scale of that varies, of course. Some kids, the stress is just school stress, leading them to eating a little bit more than they should. Some is deep trauma from it. I hear so many stories of kids being born with 5 different types of drugs in their bloodstream. Parents are addicted. Dad is not in the picture at all from birth. So it's a scale of various amounts of emotional pain that lead to some kind of coping mechanism. And of course, the parents who are coming to me, the coping mechanism is overeating and it's excess weight. But I'm sure there's so many other parents who are so confused. Why is my kid so addicted to video games, to porn, to just hanging out with the wrong people, to drugs, obviously. Right.
Yeah.
So that's the most common pattern that we see: emotional pain and emotional coping. And to an extent of that, it's ADHD, which often the root cause of ADHD is emotional pain, is stress, it's anxiety. It's your brain being overwhelmed with emotions internal that it doesn't know what to do with, and it's trying so hard to suppress it that when it comes time to suppressing any other emotion and impulse, when it comes to food or doing your homework, it just has no chance. Right.
Yeah.
And the most another most like common one that I see is this: the parents, they don't really know what to do. They're trying their best. They're trying all these different things, just like my mom did, but nothing's working. And because nothing's working, there's a lot of disagreements between them. The parents are having difficulty being on the same page about what to do to help their kids. And to an extent of that, sometimes the parents, just like my mom, they themselves are still struggling with it. If it's not food, maybe it's another kind of addiction. Sometimes it's shopping, sometimes it's alcohol, sometimes it's cigarettes. But your kid doesn't have access to those, so the only way they can cope is with food.
Throughout all of this story from the beginning up until that point, you mentioned that you were able to overcome. You mentioned a lot of emotional work, focusing on the backside of the story. Really, you never really focused on weighing people or creating the meal plan for them or exercising. Yet we see so much success with the families that you're working with.
Yeah. So the most important thing to understand is that the weight is just a symptom. The eating is just a symptom. Overeating is just a symptom. Going for sugars and junk food, sneaking behind your back, hiding food, all of these, it's just a symptom. You're never going to be able to solve the problem if you just focus on your child's eating patterns. You have to go deeper. You have to understand why they're overeating. Why are they going for the second or third serving? Why do they immediately want dessert? Why are they eating raw pasta? Why do you need to lock up the pantry? Right?
Yeah.
So we have to go a little bit deeper. And once we solve that, you'll just naturally see the kids gonna. Sometimes I tell this to parents. You never observe a deer in the wild being overweight. They just eat until they're satisfied and their weight is normal. You kind of want to get to that point as a human being. You don't want to obsess about calories or macronutrients or your weight. You just want to be emotionally and mentally healthy so that your mind can take care of its body, because that's what it does naturally.
I'm gonna ask you now to close your eyes for a second and picture that you can go back in time to that little Kamy that was struggling with a lot of emotions, with a lot of hate from the peers, and with everything what you just described, and go back to your mom and your dad in that time in the past with all the knowledge that you have, with all the experience and the work that you've done on yourself and with other families so far. Would your family benefit from that? What you would just tell them? And if so, how would that make you feel?
So this is where I'm going to be very honest. And the biggest challenge in the work that we do, the parents have to be open for the change. And so much so that to this day, I still don't believe my parents are. In the past, they probably wouldn't have been either. So there's a part of me that believes that there's maybe nothing I could have done for little Kami, because I wouldn't have been able to convince them. But there's a part of me that like is trying as much as I can, right? Trying to get through to parents, try to get through to my own parents to help them understand this. To just, this is what I really wanted. For someone, when they see me overeat, to just give me a hug, to figure out what's going on. Why is my brain signaling hunger when it's probably something else? As opposed to making me feel like ashamed. Like, oh, you're overeating again. Stop it. Like, why can't you stop? That would even make it worse, right? It would make me feel more judged and more emotional, and I would stop even feeling like I could trust them with even my hunger. Like, I would hide food, I would sneak food, and I would try to do as much as I can so that they don't see me and I don't feel judged.
Yeah.
So that's what I would do. I would try my best to help them understand that it was really pain that was being covered with hunger.
I'm sure right now you have a lot of positive influence on all the families that decided to trust you along the way. And that is, in my opinion, something to be very proud of. Because in a strange way, how you're healing yourself with all the knowledge that you're passing on to those families, the most importantly, you're healing so many lives out there. How does that make you feel today, knowing what you know, what you've overcame, and what you're still battling? Where are you today?
It feels like it's out of my hands. This is my purpose. I felt that pain so I can pass it on, so I can help others not go through the same thing I did. So I feel extremely hopeful. I feel this fire burning in my heart again, but almost like an inferno. So much energy to try to push the world forward and really understand that behind all of the obesity that we have, behind all the addiction that we have, it's just some kind of pain along the way. And it's all it takes is for someone to see you go through that pain, to
Yeah.
understand you, to hold you, to be like, hey, I may not understand what exactly you're going through, but I know you're going through something. Let's talk about it. So I feel extremely good. I feel like this is all of that led to this point where we can put all of our energy into helping millions, hundreds of millions of people in the world. And it's just a matter of time.
So is that the vision for the future of your company?
Yeah, we're going to use everything we've learned through our own pain to make sure that the smaller version of ourselves never has to go through that again.
I think that's a huge success already.
Yeah.
A vision like this, having that purpose to save lots of suffering and lots of questions and uncertainty to all those innocent souls, and just show them the shortcut through this painful road that they could have ended up, but they found you. And if I can say anything to encourage you, or just to express my congratulations and keep on going, is just keep on going. There's many people out there waiting for you, and they will meet you, I'm sure.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything you would like to add, some message to some parents that are watching our conversation right now and they might be going through some similar feelings or struggles that you would describe here? Is there anything that you would like to tell them?
Yeah, if you made it this far in this conversation, you clearly saw that this is a deeply emotional thing. We're passionate people and we really want to help you as much as we can. And hopefully you see that this is not just some kind of diet or exercise advice. This is much deeper. And I really urge you to look a little bit deeper into both your child's patterns and emotions, and also yourself. Try to notice in your own childhood what are all the things that led to the parent that you are today. And if you ever want to talk to us to help understand that even more and help understand how to help your kid not go through what we did, then you're welcome to talk to us.
Thank you, Kamy.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thank you for opening up. I'm sure that there's lots of families that will appreciate your honesty, openness, and your willingness to show yourself to the world, so other people can see you and so they can be seen.